and welcome to Rantasy, as we've been
Rantasy.
calling it, where we rant about fantasy shows, or just maybe talk about them. We'll see. We are talking about Legends of Vox Machina, Season 2, Episodes 4 through 6. So we are probably going to get pretty spoilery as we sort of go through breakdown, partially because the events at the end of Episode 3 are pretty major. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit.
Oh,
So,
yes.
Josh, would you like to lead?
Can I just say, hot damn of a cliffhanger was episode 3, right? And then to immediately go into it with the whole trinket, how they found trinket scene, which have we even, did they even like really discuss how Vex got trinkets?
Like in the stream?
Yeah.
A little bit, not a ton. I think that's one of those that got talked about like maybe once or twice, and then we just know about through the wiki page.
Right. I thought that parallel, and then that going straight into, oh crap, my sister's dead. And then it was just like you're already like your heart's racing as soon as like it starts, and I thought that was like a great way to pick it up.
Yeah, it's a really good way to keep the tension high after we've waited a week to watch it.
Oh yeah, but just I mean the whole like temple of the matron of the ravens, right? You know, goddess of death, and just having, first of all, beautifully animated. That was like the perfect like balance of like the porcelain face, the feathers going everywhere, and just kind of this mass blob kind of thing. It's not really a form, but it's just feathers and a mask. And it's just like
and claw-like fingers. I mean, she's haunting.
Yeah, like absolutely. Like you're like, this is supposed to be one of like the good guys, but it's like, you know, just like whole. And it was just like that whole like beginning sequence of just like Vax just like seeing everything happen, and then having
like
just
in
like
slow
motion, and then the Raven Queen just like accepting his offer and just cutting that thread. I was just like, oh.
And I think the part of it that really is just so like agonizingly haunting is the fact that this is a thread between him and Vex. And either way, that cord is now severed. Like their fates are no longer tied to each other. No matter what happens. Either Vex dies or Vax becomes her champion. And so it's very interesting to, like, as he says, take me, the thread still is cut.
And we see the parallel later when he's like sitting outside like the burnt down building, of like it shows like the flashback to like the old man, and she like drags him back with this new like golden thread.
Like a leash.
And you just kind of see like, oh, the thread that him and his sister had was like a kind of a white, wispy white like thread that snaps, but she could just grab it with her claws and pull it back. And it's kind of that whole like, now you're mine thing.
Right.
And I think because we kind of get that in the show, because there's a lot of sequences with the Raven Queen, and you know, Vax struggling with that. I think he struggles a little bit more in the animated series. I feel like it was kind of in the stream, it takes a little bit longer for him to really like get the gravitas of the situation. But I feel like he kind of like almost understands immediately what he signed up for, if he not just knows exactly yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think he knows that something is up, and I mean, poor Vax is having a rough time through all 3 of these episodes, with the flashback to the burning building, the spirit realm that he's in with Pervon's soul. Like there's so much that's going on in his mind, mostly, that is just, ooh, buddy, he's having a rough go of it today. But it does really sink in very quick.
Yeah, which is kind of nice, right? Because in a show like this, you don't have that time to really like slow bone it as much. And
Right.
I think definitely having that scene with Paval and that whole fight sequence, and then him realizing what it means to be the champion, like that whole like it's death, you solve death, it's inevitable. I
And you
think
can't
that,
run from it. Yeah.
and I feel like that's like that was a good way to kind of sequence it. Because like I mean, we know that magical items take like 30 minutes to attune to, so I kind of felt like that a little bit. But it's
Yeah,
like,
and especially like at this moment of, extreme peril for everyone else.
mm-hmm. So it's just like I was like, okay, this like mechanically and everything, it makes sense and it feels like making sense. But it was just like him like kind of like understanding all this and then immediately being like serious about this and getting that that super rogue brood going. I was like, yeah, that's good. And can we just talk about how sick the armor is, like with the gold highlights with the feather details when it's
Right.
going?
Yeah,
I was
gosh,
just
it looks so
I was
good.
like, once it like he finally gets in, like it just lights up. I was like, oh fuck! And then he does his whole sequence fighting the monster. You're just like, you just get to see how powerful the vestiges are, which is just like, because in the tabletop we see him like, oh yes, I activate it and then I just run super fast. But now having this whole sequence gets to say like, oh no, this is like a crazy magical powerful thing.
Yeah, and it's cool as hell.
Oh yeah.
God, the shot of Vax like leaping up
Mm-hmm.
to get the final kill on the not beholder.
Mm-hmm.
With the matron of ravens like mosaic behind him, like, oh, so good. Eat it up. Love it.
I want a poster of just that.
Yeah, oh no, it's
that scene.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the topic of the beholder real fast, I do love how because it's its own property and like all of the gods are going by different names even though they are
Mm-hmm.
inspired by the gods that were in D&D and Pathfinder in the case of Serenre. I think it's really funny how they made what we all know as a beholder look not like the D&D art. I thought that was very interesting and fun.
Right. And it's like it was a cool sequence of like how they like, because I was wondering how they're gonna do that.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was a kind of a good nod to it without making it totally obvious.
Right.
Yeah, it was like if you didn't know what a beholder was, you would think, oh, this is something completely different. Right?
Yeah, it's just some monster.
Yeah, it's just a monster. That's crazy. I mean, people are like, oh, it's really, they fought a beholder at this point. And then they're like, oh, okay.
And I really like how they've sort of rearranged it. Because if I recall correctly, the beholder was before they actually found the tomb itself, or like right at the same time. And then Vax ended up falling into this pit that the beholder had come out of and was still down there whenever Percy and Vex started to do just like your typical looting situation. And so they've completely moved where that monster was in the dungeon. And I think that works a lot better. I also think it really shows the personalities of Zahra and Cash. How Zahra is pretty willing to just let them die. And Cash at a certain point is like, we can't do this. This is wrong.
Right. And we definitely see like, I think they definitely, because we don't see them too often in the stream. So they definitely had a little bit more character time. It was kind of nice to see them kind of be like a little bit more personality coming out of them. Right.
Right. And then they're dynamic together.
Right. Yeah, I love the addition of like, you see like Cash kind of spring in and like, we need a revival now and like resurrector. We only got like we have to do this. And like Saw is just like kind of like, why betray the Slayer's take for these random people?
Right.
And it's just like, he's just like that inherent goodness of Cash. It's just like, I got to.
It's like it's one thing to like turn them into Osysa and get the like the wanted reward that was promised a couple episodes before. It's a totally different thing to leave them in a damp dungeon literally just to die.
Right. and it's just like, and I did like they retcon the kiss.
Mm-hmm.
That was a part of contention of if that was going to be added in
Yeah,
between.
I really wondered what they were gonna do. Like they still kept the flirting in, which I think was a very good choice.
Mhm.
Um, but I think given that we sort of skipped that other portion and are building a different story, I think it was probably a decent thing to cut.
Right. And I think people that I think that was just like a good thing in just general, right? Because it's just like Keyleth is still like naive and
Mm-hmm.
kind of do that, and Vax, we know they get together, right?
Yeah.
But like whole scene, what like other affection looks like, or like someone being like, "Hey, hottie," type
Yeah.
thing. Quote Cash, "I got an
Lucky I
ass that
was
won't
here.
stop."
Yeah, lucky.
Yeah, yeah. It's like to quote like Cash, is like, "I got an ass that won't stop." It's just like
Yeah, amazing.
it's just like
What
that, like
what mm,
right. It's just like it was funny enough and like flirtatious enough without like crossing that line that kind of happened during the stream a little bit with the
yeah.
candles.
And I think again on stream it's a little different because you or not even like on stream, but like
Mhm.
around a table it's very
Mhm.
different because you are reading the energy. And I think part of what made that scene so monumental in Critical Role in the stream is Marisha's reaction.
Mhm.
And I think without that it would get a little bit weak.
Mhm.
And I think also if I recall correctly, I think no, I'm thinking of when Vax kisses Keyleth in and later when Laura reacts.
Mhm. But no, I definitely think like, and they kind of set it up too for like they have because they Cash and Zahra come back as allies, and it kind of felt like they left it
Hmm.
on like good terms, and it's just like because they stick around them for like a little bit longer, I think.
Right.
But this was kind of a good clean cutoff, and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and then we also get Zara giving Vex the Pokeball, as it's been referred to.
I love the Pokeball so much. It looked It
I
looked exactly like it. I was like, it's a Pokeball. It's a trinket Pokeball.
Yeah. So this is the funny thing is that the necklace that Zara has in the cartoon is much more Pokeball looking, um, but is not at all how it's described in the stream, which is described
Mhm.
as a black pointed crystal.
Mhm.
Um, and so I will say I was like, while it is funny that it does look more like a Pokeball, I am a little bit disappointed in the look of it just because it is a little bit more boring to me, I
Mhm.
suppose. But I do really like the transition of how Vex gets it as opposed to getting it out of the tomb.
Right. And I'll do like Grog's like, oh, send me in. Because at some
Yeah.
point Grog does go in.
Yeah, foreshadowing.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's
Love
hilarious.
it. Love it. I cannot wait for that bit. That's
That's
going to be such a good episode.
oh.
But
But that's
yeah,
yeah.
I didn't have a lot on this episode because I just loved it and I just enjoyed watching it. So I didn't really have a lot of thoughts. The only one I have as far as ranting goes is between Vex and Vax, the nothing's changed, everything's changed. And I'm like, yes, everything has changed for Vax. I
Mhm.
totally get that, but like, oh, what a tropey line. I've
I,
always hated that type of line. I think it's so weird. That's just
yeah.
me.
And I feel like that's just that rogue Brook, right? He wants
Oh,
to
it's Vax. I walk away.
yeah.
Like that's what that is.
That's yeah. I definitely was
So
like
very on brand, but whatever.
mhm. But I feel like it makes sense for him, right? Because like you saw, I think it was because especially because we just came out of that the Raven Queen like grabbing, and then like the flash of the
Yeah,
zombie
yeah.
Vax. Like he knows now that like he's not going to be with his sister, right? And
Hmm.
that's like the biggest fear that he has, and now like it's always had his sister, and now it's like his destiny is not aligned with hers. So like
Hmm.
everything, his whole world has been like changed, but she doesn't realize that at all.
Yeah.
I felt like
And as go
sorry.
ahead.
So I feel like it makes sense. Could is it like typical rogue behavior?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the other thing too is that, you know, as of the previous episode, when we get the flashbacks of Vex and Vax leaving Singorn, we get the bit where he's like, you know, you don't need me, but I need you, to Vex. And now he's the one that has to walk away. Because he's made this deal to save her because he needs her, and that is going to be the thing that forces him to leave. It is a little bit Greek tragedy in that way.
Right. And I think because at that moment they embrace, well, this time he walks away.
Yeah.
And I feel like, because he really doesn't, and at that point he's kind of, I think from immediately we see he starts pulling himself away. Like he's not with them when they say goodbye to Cash and Zahra. And in the later episodes too, he's always like kind of like be far enough ahead that he is like, you know, away. Like he's trying to slowly separate himself out from it, which I feel like we had more of it in the stream because it took longer, but at the same time it makes sense. But I think it's that really dialed into that typical rogue behavior. Of like broody moodiness, especially now that he's wearing the vestige. But yeah, overall, I thought fantastic episode, and just sequencing was great.
Hang tight.
Oh.
All right, I think we're back to normal. Can you repeat what you just said, because it was all spinny and garbled and
I thought it was a fantastic episode, great sequencing, and like not too much to like really like rant about. Besides, it was just rant how great
I don't have anything to rant.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're going to kind of run into that a couple times through the next 2 episodes, because again, I really enjoyed these. I didn't have a lot that really just like grated on me. So, do we move on?
I think we move on.
All right, episode 5, which is pretty much Keyleth's episode. I loved how this episode opened. It was so ambient and so beautiful on the mountaintop with like the cherry blossoms. It was yes. Loved it. The other thing, and one thing that I always thought was very strange, was how Keyleth was also half elven. Just the way her character was, like the way the backstory was, the way that her family was written, she always felt very full elven to me. And every time I was reminded she was half elven, I was very confused. And so in this one, both of her parents were elven, so she is full elven. And I'm like, this makes sense to me. This is who I always pictured. It's a minor thing. It's definitely very nitpicky in the opposite direction. But I really loved it. I was very grateful for that little nugget. I was like, yes, I feel validated for having thought this was weird for years.
Right. And there's like another thing too, like granted, she's the druid that gets the timeless body, right? And so she's got to outlive people. But definitely in the show, it's like she will be I think we see it in Osysa thing, like she'll be the last one left. Right, and they really played into that, and it doesn't really feel as in like the druid part of it, because they really don't go over that, but it feels more that elvish timelessness, right?
Yeah. And I mean, Osysa could be all-knowing in that way, and be shooting ahead towards the timeless, ageless body for druid, but it's not clear yet.
Yeah, and I feel like it makes more sense for her to be that full elf, and kind of have that more like that kind of more in tune with nature thing, with being also being the druid. I think that was a great play to do.
Yeah, again, it's such a small thing. It's very nitpicky in the opposite direction, but I loved it.
And can we just talk about for a quick moment that the voice actor that played Korra in Legend of Avatar was Keyleth's mom,
Janet Varney?
Yes.
I was just like that.
Yeah. I was like, that sounds familiar. And then I looked it up. I was like, oh, she plays the Avatar in Legend of Korra.
It is one of those. Like I know people get a little, me included, get aggravated whenever it's like, oh, you just made this character from this other fiction, and like when that's not true. It is very funny to me how I see a lot of Avatar parallels in both Keyleth and Bo.
I see that.
So it is that much more funny to me because Bo to me is very Korra, where Keyleth is very Aang. So it is a little funny that now we have Korra's voice actor being Keyleth's mom when she already has so much Avatar stuff going on.
I know. The whole control the elements be
like I mean, I'm very pro.
Yes.
But I do think I always think it's really funny.
It's really super good. But that sequence in, and we see like the best dad.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Like so good. And like he shows up, he's like, "Oh, my darling daughter, you're here. How wonderful!" Like it was like tack. There's like
I know
bio moments everywhere. He's like, "Oh, look, my lovely daughter. How are you? You're here."
Yeah, he's like, whatever I'm doing right this second can wait.
Yeah. I was like, "Oh, that is."
Oh my gosh, the feeling of inadequacy that she has the whole time, and then whenever he's like, "You've completed your fire trial," and she's like, maybe I just won't tell him yet.
Right. Then we see Laura is there, and
oh my gosh, I kept wondering. I was like, what is going to be the story with Allura? Like, how is she getting out of how did she get out of Amon? What are we doing in the cartoon? Like, what's the story? So I'm really glad that they're all okay, and I think it was pretty well explained. I didn't need too much from it, but yeah.
Yeah,
I love Laura so much.
That makes sense. And then there was the kiss too. That was the great kiss. I was like, yes, perfect. But I think this was just
these bitches gay. Good for them.
Good for them. Good for them.
For them.
But it was. We see like Vax get a little like huffy of we don't have time for this, but it's like we have time because these are keyless people type thing. It's just like
I
was like, listen, I know we're moody and broody, but like this is something big, right?
I do think that Vax is feeling the ticking clock more than anybody. It did absolutely rip my heart out that Vax of all people was the one telling Keyleth, we don't have time.
Yeah, and it was just like I was like, I mean, I feel like that could have played out. I see. I think they made Vax the character of urgency in this section of the series, right? Because right now he has the most to lose, in essence. Now,
right.
So I think he definitely has that ticking on him.
Yeah, and it can't keep being Percy. So.
Oh no, God.
I saw something. I think it was a TikTok recently that talked about Percy being like he had one goal and now he's just kind of hanging out,
right?
Because these are his friends, and he needs to make sure they're safe. And I thought it was a really good summation of his character arc after the Briarwood arc, which is like these are my buddies, and what else am I gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, he's just like, oh, I'm gonna go create like new inventions and hang out and follow Vex around and do all that stuff. And I do see
an ass that don't quit.
Yes, but it definitely makes sense because you feel like he still has like worldly maturing to do because he was just so focused on revenge. So I think his arc from now on is going to be like how like the world works type thing outside of like nobility and revengeance. And we see that kind of with that last little bit with Vax of just like him trying to apologize and him feeling sorry and Vax just decking him. It's just like, I don't want to hear this right now, but you keep on going, I'm going to punch you in the face. And it's just like, he's like, he can't talk his way out of everything. Sometimes it's just better just to be like, accept the things. Yeah. So I think he's getting into that. But right now he's like, I love the scene where when they're fighting like the little fire dragon worms. I am very flammable.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's especially funny from Percy, who of course has gunpowder on him. I'm like, yeah, he is super flammable.
Oh yeah.
But no, on the punch though, like, I mean, Percy absolutely deserves that from Vax because it was Vax's sister that Percy got killed. So definitely deserved. However, I think knowing who Percy has already tortured himself inside his own mind enough. So like Percy's suffered enough already, but the punch is still deserved.
Yes. But if like it'll be interesting to see what goes on from here, right? Because season 1 was so dedicated to Percy. We really didn't have too much character growth. But we had Pike coming back to religion. Or finding her own path. And that was kind of the only other backstory we really kind of got.
Yeah. This one is way more balanced.
Yes, and I find that's awesome. And it's just it makes it more interesting, right? Because then you don't have just like spotlight heroes in the group.
Right. Yeah, we've gotten a lot of focus on Scanlan and what will become his arc. We've gotten a lot of focus on Vax, obviously. We get a lot of focus in this episode on Keyleth, and we are getting a lot of focus in the next episode on Grog. Or at least where his story goes immediately after this. So I think that pretty much leaves Percy, who's already had a lot of his time in the sun. And he definitely has his moments, but we're definitely not trying to give him so much spotlight since he had so much last season.
So much.
And right now, Vex is sort of an extension of Vax. So she's not getting her own spotlight just yet, but it does feel like it's coming.
Oh yeah. I think we will see it in like later episodes. Definitely. But in terms of other things, Keyleth going like full fire avatar.
God, her fire outfit is so good.
I was just like, that's badass. She gets her crystal and everything, and it's just like I was like, it felt like a good, like it wasn't really. It's like not really a side episode, but it's like a side episode because it's like part of the main quest line, right? It helps.
It's not necessarily part of the Chroma Conclave
directly, but it's like everyone kind of Keyleth gets a power up, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a little side quest power up thing that I think that's kind of good at this point in the episode because this is episode 5, so we're getting to like the halfway point. So it's kind of like, and especially at this point, Keyleth has just kind of been struggling. Like in terms of like kind of power rise, it's been more defensive. We see it with a lot of her plants. Right, and we don't because we still like change into Mixie and trying to fight, but it's like whole stuff is not really offensive magic in terms of the elemental stuff yet. And I feel like this is kind of a shift towards that now she can start using her magic more like practice wise.
So far, the biggest offensive magic we've seen her use is Daylight on or Sunbeam on
Briarwoods.
Thank you. Silas, that's his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on Silas Briarwood. And that scene, it takes a lot out of her whenever she does cast that. And so now it does feel like it's going to be a lot easier.
Right. Like she comes back out of a avatar. It's like, I'm fine. I'm a little tired, but like I'm good.
Yeah.
And it's just
also, I do love the transformation with the gemstone and the change of outfit and just the aesthetics of it, because it does, for me, feel like Sailor Moon and Avatar kind of smacked together for a brief minute. And I'm like, yes, this is the culmination of everything I've ever loved.
Yes. No, like it was good. Like it was great. I'm trying to think of like anything in like... Oh, we do have the broom sequence, finally. Vex does get her broom. And that's...
And I do think that her like maturity speech before getting it is so Vex. And I think it's a really good reminder that like she's technically still like young adult child. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because no one who says, I'm so mature actually is.
Right. And this whole like having like a fit of Scaly, give me the keyboard now for this. It's like, I just need a one favor. And she's just like,
Yep.
that's all it is.
Yeah, so I can't wait to see how they're going to manifest that one in the cartoon.
That's gonna be hilarious. Oh, I cannot wait. Cannot wait.
But yeah, I only had a couple other like notes from this episode of just things that I really liked, which was Craven Edge is a lot funnier than I remember him being. Which I don't think that Matt was playing Craven Edge to be funny in the stream. I think that they wrote that in because it would be really good to pair with Grog. And so, like, whenever Grog's off taking a dump and talking to Craven Edge, and he's just like, ugh, this is idiot. Why? So that was very good. Pike and Grog have a very cute traveling friends song, and I thought it was very sweet. And there was a bit whenever they run into Pyra where Grog does a really good little head shake. Kind of just, you know, psychs himself up and then runs in. And I was like, yes, this is good animation.
Yeah.
Good soup.
Good soup.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for this episode. Again, loved it.
Oh, yeah. So, ready for the next one?
Episode 6, let's go. Grog time!
Grog.
That was my very first note was Grog time.
Grog time. We do get some gruesome back. We've been pretty tame this whole time, this season. But I feel like it's justified and makes sense.
Yeah, this one didn't feel gratuitous in any way.
Like it's the giant barbarian. There's gotta be some bloodshed in that whole everything.
Yeah. But again, was not too much. So appreciated that. Let's see. One thing I do have as a note that I thought was very cute is between, and I probably should have mentioned this last one, is Vax and Keyleth being a future couple having the first outfit change. And I didn't notice it until they were walking together at the beginning of episode 6. And I was like, wait a second. You two get together later. So I think it's cute. They went shopping.
Yep. Shopping. Oh, but
and we get to the frosty area, and Percy gives Vex his coat.
He's like, "It's fine." I'm shivering. I feel like
I have a very good friend whose favorite character is Percy, and that scene to me, I wish I had been watching that episode with him, so I could have just been like, because it's so him.
Yeah, it totally makes sense because he says like, "I'm cold." I'm cold as death. Right, it's something like along the like he's like dead, and he just immediately has to, and then he'll just rather have himself suffer for his mistakes. I was like, typical Percy.
Guilt. Yeah. For a stream and world without Catholicism, Percy has a lot of Catholic guilt.
I mean, he's a noble.
Noble guilt. Noble guilt. See, another thing I loved is the papoose for Scanlan.
Oh my god, I forgot about that for a second.
I mean, the whole first half of this episode was just little tiny things that I thought were so cute, and I just loved them so much. But that brings us to the Sphinx, who we've nicknamed Cam.
Yep.
I meant to look up the pronunciation again, but I have forgotten.
Kamala Joy. That's close-ish.
Kamala Jory.
Yeah.
Kamala Jory. My bad. There we go.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we're gonna go back to Cam because that is a lot of syllables.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I thought Cam was really cool. I loved I think similar to Osysa, the gravitas that the art had and the voice had, just so good. And you have to wound me as a challenge, which I think is more dynamic for a visual medium than it was for like an audio medium.
Yes. And I do like the juxtaposition, right? Because we have Cam being more of the physical. All these challenges are like physical. You have to kill the death minotaurs, or you have to slay something else, or travel the labyrinth, or
the
wound
Gorgons.
me. And Odysseus is just more of the cerebral, right? She is kind of the what is your feels, what is you gain from this quest. And I feel like that juxtaposition is we kind of see is like a good like counterbalance of like how these sphinxes are partnered.
Yeah, it's sort of an opposites attract in a way.
And I was just like, I do love the little banter of just like Grog's like, guys, those minotaurs sound so much fun. Let's do that.
Yeah, the huddle was perfect. So good.
It's like, no,
because obviously we're gonna get into we're gonna fight the Sphinx, like obviously.
Right.
But it is very funny to sort of pretend for a minute that we're not.
Yeah, and it was such a good thing too. And then we get like the transported into like the stadium, and it's like Vax just goes, oh, let me just activate my new cool thing, and then the Sphinx just like poof. It's like, oh, you got a vestige. That's nice. Tunk.
Yeah, like and the way it all goes, because Vax, of course, is like, I've got the cool new thing, I've got this. So he goes rushing in and is made short work of, and then Vex does the whole like, that's my brother, and so then she jumps in, and then Percy jumps in, and then like everyone else is jumping in, and then it's just down to Scanlan, and he's like, what can I do? But I loved the song. I loved the very like pop vibe, pop music video vibe to it. How Osysa's voice joined in for it. It was very, very good. It's so silly, so wonderful. Yeah, big fan.
It was like classic 80s love ballad.
Yes, exactly.
Like you would see that like in an 80s movie, like the characters for falling in love. And it's just like it was just like because Scanlan's music has really like it's not part of like the fantasy realm. It kind of transcends that to more the Bard's stuff, kind of, because in the stream he was just kind of just ripping off popular songs, right?
Right.
And it was just changing the words.
Which you can't really do.
Which you can't do, but I feel this was kind of like a nice way to do it, almost. Right? Because you kind of get the vibes of the song. Because he does something similar in the stream as well. It's kind of like that ballady type thing. But that whole sequence, I was just, he's like, oh, you ruined my heart. He's just like, that worked?
I know.
It's just such a funny thing when it's just like you have all these massive characters that have all these crazy abilities, but the Bard is the one to wound the mighty Sphinx through his wounding his heart rather than his body.
And then make him laugh because he's so clever and so wise, and everyone's like, Scanlan?
And he's like, you must know great love of your life, and then you see a little bit of Scanlan peeking through. He's like, actually,
oh, that was so good.
He's like, yeah, I got so much love. He's like, but really, I don't. And he goes to this deep moment. It comes like that bro moment, right? Like you're just like the two bros just talking about it, and it's just like, man, I just can't find love. He's like, maybe love's gonna find you, bro. And I was just like, I've had this same conversation at like 2 a.m. on like podcast, like right, like I was just like, this is just like hilarious that that's like how they connected together and like shown that. I was just like, yeah. And it kind of alludes to like way later on too, during like the last final battle of getting some more powers. That Scanlan is the one that's chosen. So I feel like that will probably be a good throwback to that a little bit, but I don't know. It was just that whole sequence was just.
And then we get to the heartbreaking part. So end of the previous episode, Ripley showed back up and was like, haha, I've got some information for you. And we don't know what she traded for that, like what assurances she was given yet. And then Umbrasyl shows up and steals Myth Carver, which I loved watching Myth Carver like grow and shrink in size to fit whoever like was using it. I thought that was really nice and kind of answers the question of like, can a gnome attune to the like the Titanstone knuckles, for example?
Ooh.
It's like they're just gonna shrink. They're gonna fit. But yeah, and so the battle is so cool between Kamaljiori and Umbrasyl, but oh my gosh, it devastated me because I remember in the stream that nothing happened. They left and they're fine. And knowing that Osysa and Kamaljiori have been apart for so long and now are never going to reunite, I was like, damn it!
Oh yeah, it was just. I was sad. I was like, damn it, you get this love song. He's like, you remind me of that. It's like, and they're like writing a love song together.
I know.
And then he gets attacked, and just like, and he dies saving Scanlan. Right? Like it's just like,
and it's one of those where it's like, is it because we don't spend enough time to really know the answer to this, and so it's probably a bit of column A, column B. Is this like, you know, his new buddy and he's saving him because they're friends, or is he saving him because he's been chosen by a vestige and therefore is important to save the world? Or, and again, column A or column B, like both. And then, but then we don't even get a moment to like ease up on that, because even as they're trying to escape, we get Grog stabbing Pike.
Oh. Like Craven
which we knew was coming because Craven Edge is Craven Edge.
Right.
And we got the vision from Grog's dream and knew that was going to happen.
And it's just
losing both like Cam and losing Pike within 2 minutes of each other.
Right. And I feel like it was a crazy sequence because you really saw the power of Craven Edge fighting Umbrasyl, right? It was doing damage, even at like Grog would probably like Grog would just kept going, like maybe could have actually killed him, maybe not, but it was like the amount of damage it was significant, but at the cost of just purely into the bloodlust into it, and then just Pike just trying to stop his buddies and
trying to make sure her like best friend is safe.
Yeah, and I mean we see it through all like the episodes too of like, I think that sword's bad. I'm pretty sure that the sword's bad, Grog. Like you should do that, and then all of a sudden it's like it happens, and he like immediately snaps out of it.
And one thing I do like about these over the stream is in the stream there is kind of the question of like, how did we not find time to throw away the sword? But in this one, it's like, yeah, there is no time because we literally like he got it, spent very little time with it. You know, got back to Amon. Amon was attacked. Figured that shit out. Got to the tomb of the Raven Queen or Matron of Ravens, and that's about when people were like, "What's up with that? That's weird." So that's really the first time we see Craven Edge do something to Grog. And then Vex is dead. And then we have to go to see Kamaljiori. And then we get attacked by Umbrasyl. So we have not had time to do anything with the sword at this point.
And by that point, it's too late, right?
It's too late, yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like, oh God. And then the teleportation to get out of there. And
and then still getting separated.
It's still getting separated. And it's just like, I feel like it is like a pattern showing that every 3 episodes it leaves off with like a crazy cliffhanger, because that's what, you know, the people got to stop watching for the week,
right?
Because it feels like we don't really have that kind of like heart beating ending in like 4 or 5. They have like nice resoluted endings, like 4 carries over, and so it's just like, it's kind of like, is this gonna be a pattern of this? Like, they know when people are going to stop watching, so we can expect some crazy stuff in those episodes,
right?
but at the same time,
Yeah,
I love
it's
it. I'm just like, oh
yeah,
my
I think
god.
the only complaint I have on episode 6, and probably the only like strong complaint I have on those 3 episodes in total is the loss of Cam.
Yeah.
Just because that is a pretty big change. I mean, it's a really big change. And it does really, let's just like, that's the kind of stuff that really just gets me in media is
Mm-hmm.
like loving couples not getting to be together.
Yeah. And it's just, and it's like, I felt like we didn't really need him to die, right? It was just kind of like protecting Scanlan, but it could have been, you guys get out of here, and then Cam like him and the Umbrasyl fight. Then he gets out once the like fight happens, but they're like, oh no, let's fight. And Grog instigates is like, you're fighting, and then Craven Edge kind of takes over.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple different ways it could have gone. I'm not sure if any of them are necessarily better, like narratively speaking. But it does make me sad. So
yeah.
Agreed. But anyway, we've transported ourselves to the Feywild, so I can't wait for this.
Oh god, it's that whole sequence in the stream is so crazy. We get to see some crazy characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like,
we get Garmelie and the theater, and we get to see Vex and Vax's dad again, which can't wait for that reunion. And then poor Percy doesn't remember it at all.
Right. I feel like
poor guy.
I feel like we know they're gonna see the father, and I feel like this is gonna be a moment more for Vex rather than Vax, because Vax hates his dad already, and he's kind of got his moment. I think it's gonna be more of a thing for Vex and showing that.
Mm-hmm.
We do get to see. You have to change the title of this invitation. This is for Vex's title.
Yeah. If they stick with it, I'm very excited to see that. And I love watching that particular clip on stream all the time because I love how like Laura and Travis are next to each other, and Travis is just as psyched as Laura. He's like, yes. I love how much he's like, yes, I support my wife and her character getting good things.
Right. So it's gonna be a crazy sequence. I wonder how long we're gonna stay in the Feywild too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would expect an episode and a half.
And I wonder how Whale, Pike, and Grog and Scanlan goes.
Yeah.
Because that's a pretty big divergence.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. I'll probably watch the most recent 3 tonight.
Same.
I've been itching. I'm like, do I want to watch ahead? I was like, no, I'll get confused.
Right.
So
yeah, that's overall not too much to complain about. So I think some of the changes were for the better. The whole Cam thing.
I'm not sure it's for the better, but
it's that one is the only one I'm like still like, yeah.
That's the only one I don't feel good about.
Yeah. But I do like what's been happening, and I'll go back to like the last episode. I was just saying, it feels like a show now.
Yes.
Right. I feel this like really is like cements it as like this is, because the first one still kind of felt like tabletop-y ish.
Yeah.
A little bit. Like towards the end it got better. But like this one feels like it has like that check marks for like a show. It's got some side parts, it's got chaotic growth, it's spreading the love around, especially when you have like 7 different people that you have to keep track of, all the backstories. That's a lot to do. So I feel like this
that's why I'd like to keep it at 5 maximum.
Agreed. But so I think it's just, this has been a good way to kind of, I feel like this was like the right direction for the show to go, was how they've been. We've like missed some stuff, but at the same time, was that stuff really necessary type things? But I feel like we're in the right path.
One thing I do think is funny, especially as you say, it feels like a show, is how many people whined about the stream being scripted, which of course it wasn't. But people being like, oh, they must be scripted. You know, the roles are made up, like, you know, all this stuff to basically say that they weren't actually playing D&D because no D&D show would be that successful. Just all of that kind of slander. And it is a little bit funny to me now that they have their own cartoon that they, in fact, have to script.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, joke's on you. They did so well that now they have to script it. So
right. I don't know.
maybe if you hadn't manifested.
I haven't thought about that, but yeah. I mean,
it is kind of comeuppance-y, isn't it?
It is. It's like, oh, you don't want a scripted D&D show? Well, here's a scripted D&D show. This is what you thought we wanted. This is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it is a little funny to me. Good little dose of a little bit, like, not really irony, but
exactly.
But anyway, that's pretty much all I have. Again, I didn't really have a lot of rants on these 3 episodes. So
same here. It's good, and that's sometimes that's a good thing. We'll see how these next 3 go.
Well, I like that our second gathering here is positive, as opposed to us just being like, man, I hate this show.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you got to rant about the good things.
Yeah. Well, whenever we do like House of Dragon or something, then we'll get really bitchy. But
I'll get the howlbolt out and just.
Well, anyway, I think that's it for us today.
Hope you had a great time.
And thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.